If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. Welcome back to another episode of FPL Squad Picks. It's Gameweek 33. We have got another Friday deadline, guys, so I'm going to try and get this done in one take to get this out before the deadline hits this afternoon. So at the moment in this video, we're going to take a look at the review from Gameweek 32 and see what points I got there, check some transfer options out, also look at the plan going forward for the next game weeks. Then we're going to take a look at some team selection for this week in captaincy. So let's jump in. So I'm not going to go through the usual process of every detail through all the games that have happened, but I have posted up there a bit of a description about some of the headlines that happened in the games. I think most notably we have to mention the 22nd goal from John McGinn for Villa, but Man City managing to come back with Foden saving the day. And also then the very last game of this game week, we had Vardy back in the goals again, Iñárritu keeping his form, a very good win there, 3-0 against West Brom. So Leicester assets looking really strong at the moment. So if you want to take a little look further into sort of what happened and you want to freeze this at this point, then by all means do, take a little read through that. But we're going to move on now to my team and how I got on in this last game week. So here's my team and how I got on. Not a bad score at all. I got a 75-point haul, which means a green arrow. It was quite a big green arrow. I had over a 40,000 position rank rise, so I was really pleased. Bit frustrated in some positions we'll get onto now, but on the whole, a really good performance, especially when I didn't make a transfer. I was able to roll a transfer over, and that means obviously it's going to help in the long term. So let's take a little look at some of the points that were got and not got for this game week. So obviously, notably, no goalkeepers for me this week. Mendy was rotated, he was benched, and then obviously Kappa came on for him. I was hoping that Forster would play, but unfortunately he was rotated with McCarthy. So I got no points across those, and extra frustrating when the Chelsea boys did keep a clean sheet, so it would have been a 6 point for me, but obviously notwithstanding that he got rotated and I had no backup for him. So not the end of the world, as I said, got a decent score this week. I think I would have been a bit more sort of annoyed at that decision if maybe I'd got a little bit less points, but not too bad at all. Which brings me on the defence. Got a great score there across the defence and really happy with the defenders that I've got, even the ones on the bench. Again, a bit frustrating that I've got so many points on the bench, but even looking back at the fixtures, they wouldn't have replaced the players that I've put in for the midfield, say, that didn't do so well. Yes, they may have replaced other defenders. There's an argument there. Cody probably could have been switched for Rudiger, but again, exactly the same points. So far, I was kind of thinking that he may leak a goal, because I know that Callum Wilson was back in the team. So I was thinking that they may concede, because they have been quite leaky at the back of the Hammers. But obviously, he did manage to get an assist, so he got decent points, but not outscoring anyone else that started in my defensive line. Looking at the two midfielders, Salah and Gundogan, they did blank, only 1 point apiece. Salah was benched and came on for a short period, only managing the 1 point. And then you've also got Gundogan, who didn't manage to get a return. So a bit frustrating that they only got the 1 point when I had 7 and 4 sat on the bench. But again, I don't think against the Leeds and also against an Aston Villa team, I would have replaced Salah and Gundogan with Rudiger and so far. So, it's just some things like that when you've recently wildcarded or you've got a strong bench and a rotation going on, you're going to have those headaches with benches and a few points are going to end up there. But as I said, decent points overall. Trent managed to actually get an 8 point score without keeping a clean sheet. He managed to get an assist. He got bonus points. He also got the same last week, got some good consistent score there with the bonus points. So just that attacking threat that he provides is so important. I think if you're looking for a decent asset to keep going forward, Liverpool's fixtures after sort of the Man United game that's coming up, I think they've got some really good fixtures going on till the end of the season. So he is a lot of money, but the attacking option is almost like having another midfielder. So many crosses coming into the box, a few shots now and again, and also he takes the set pieces. So he's got a lot of opportunity there for assists, more so than his teammate on the other side, Robertson. Also then looking at Lingard, managed to get on the score sheet yet again with a penalty. Did have a good game, was pushing forward, Did come off with a little niggle. Don't know quite yet. Haven't heard the team news from West Ham, but he did go off with a little niggle, but I think it was just to sort of save him from getting a major injury. But yeah, just before he did, he managed to step up for the penalty and net that one, so 7 points for him. Last game of the game week then was the Leicester fixture, which Iñárritu was really good in terms of getting up the field, in the box, taking shots, only managing the one goal. Could have been a few more, but it's just really nice to see someone, obviously, that's a really cheap price point and getting as many chances and opportunities. Even Vardy seems sort of such a team player that he's willing to get into those positions and then cross it to him if he's in a sort of open play and not just go for the goals himself. So that's good to see, and obviously any Vardy owners would have benefited from that fixture as well. He had a really good return back, getting his goal and also getting the assist. Double game week this week for Tottenham, and Kane did manage to get a 2-goal in the first fixture, but then did get injured towards the end and unfortunately missed out on the second fixture, which meant Son stepped up, also getting the same points with the second points added in from the second fixture. And then you've also got, he had some bonus points. He did get a goal ruled out through VAR, but managing to get the penalty towards the last few minutes then meant he got the returns that we were all sort of hoping for. So anyone that captained either of them got a like-for-like in points across the two fixtures. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. On to Game Week 33. So here's my team as it currently stands. I do have some blanks to navigate this week, so there are some fixtures that aren't being played, and within my team I've got my City and Spurs assets that are blanking. So I've got 3 players that will be on the bench, and I've also got a goalkeeper. So that does leave me with 11 players that have the potential to have a starting fixture or come on at all for the game. So I could just field a starting 11 there and hope that those players get picked, that they play some part. But I do have 2 free transfers this week. So instead of rolling on for no reason again, I do have almost a bit of a luxury move. But I think instead of just using it as a luxury move, I think it is wiser to sort of look at the fixtures coming up and try and sort of put someone in that's going to be beneficial for that. But there is another option, which we'll take a little look at in a sec. So without any transfers, this is how my team would set up. It's the only way it would set up really this week. As you can see, I've got the blank players on my bench, and I've got Forster on the bench, which then does give me a full starting 11. On paper, doesn't look too bad. I'm quite happy with some of those. You've got the Liverpool guys against Newcastle. You've got Iñárritu against Crystal Palace. Potentially even Vidra against Wolves if he starts. But that then brings me on to the doubts. So, as mentioned, from the back we've got Mendy. He was benched in the last fixture. So, I don't think that means Kepa comes in as the starting goalkeeper now. But I think probably just because of the fixture congestion, how well they've been doing in other competitions, that they've tried to just make sure he's fresh. And also they've got a lot of money as a club wrapped up in Kepa, so I think they don't want him going stale on the bench, because if they do ever want to move him on, or do ever want him to come on for Mendy as an injury, they want him firing on all cylinders. So I think it's more of just a sort of little nod, not the sort of fixture that they needed to play Mendy for. They could have rested him, and they managed to get a clean sheet from it anyway. So I'm hoping that he would come straight back in, and that's not an issue I'd have to solve this week, as I think there are other problems that could potentially crop up. So we've got here Alonso listed. I don't think he's going to play in this game. So even though it looks good, as I said, on paper that he's got a fixture, I don't think he's going to play, as we have seen Chilwell play, I think it was about 5 games on the bounce. He did get a rest in the last one where Alonso came on, but in a fixture against West Ham, who have been quite good as an attacking team, even though they have been leaking at the back, I just think that they might bring Chilwell back in to make sure that they shore up that defence, because Alonso, when he's playing, he's pretty much another midfielder. So I can't see him playing this one. He may play the Fulham game, I think it is, coming up in the next few game weeks. But I don't really want to hold on to him just in hope of that coming up in the future. If he blanks this week, then I've only got 10 players. So he's a potential that I might need to change. Jota I've listed here. He wasn't really on my radar to be transferred out. Liverpool have got a good run of fixtures. There has been some news recently coming up that in training, Jota wasn't photographed. Now, it wasn't to say that he didn't do anything or there wasn't another reason why he wasn't there, but because of that non-photographed training session, people have sort of suggested that he might be missing out. So I think it's going to be a case of wait on what Jurgen says today in the Friday managers' sort of press conferences and see what goes from there. But as it stands on paper again, Jota has got a really good fixture. And I think even if he doesn't start, Liverpool have got nothing else really to sort of focus on other than a league position and making sure that's secured up. So he's one of the most attacking players for them. Salah had a rest last time, so I'm sure he's going to play. I think Mane's already had a rest as well. Could see Firmino have a rest, but I think he's probably had a bit of a rest as well. So it might be Jota's turn, but I think in terms of points, he may even still come off the bench. It just depends on how well they're doing. If they obviously secure the win within the first half, you might not see him. But there's nothing to say that he doesn't come on and still get some points. So not the end of the world if he doesn't start. You just got to hope then that he does come off the bench, especially in a game week where you've got so many blanks to navigate. I have put Vidra on this list as well. He's not injured. Don't think there's anything wrong with him, but he did get benched in the last fixture and then he came on as a substitute. Obviously a very different fixture. And Wolves, maybe they can look at going a bit more attacking and trying to get the win instead of against the Man United team that sort of they wanted to defend a little bit heavier against. So I'm not really that worried. I think he should start, should get a full 90, but we'll have to wait and see on that one. And I think there's, as I mentioned, some other issues there that are lingering around Jota, Alonso and potential for Mendy that I might need to sort out going forward for this game week. So looking at the transfer options, and I've got a few decisions to make regarding, do I solve the doubts for this game week, as I just mentioned, on those players? Or do I look to potentially switch out one of the players that are blanking? And I've put here a transfer for transfer switch. So the likelihood is with the Spurs players, they've got Sheffield United next week. I'm probably going to want both of those players back next week. But this game week, that's where a lot of the money is sat on the bench. Gundogan is really not costing that much to hold and put on the bench. So him not playing this week and then playing next week is not really an issue. But for Son and Kane at their price point, they could be easily switched to a number of other players that have got good fixtures this week. So it's just a case of, do I want to do that move, bring someone in just for this focus on the game week, and then potentially want to transfer them back out again? So it just goes back to that point of, I have 2 free transfers. I could make a luxury move, which is what this would be really, transferring someone out, putting someone back in again then next week. Or would I rather focus on something like Alonso, who's a bit of an issue this week, and potentially going forward, and solve that problem now in this game week, and make sure I have a starting 11. It might mean that one of the other players like Jota doesn't play and I then go down to 10, or Mendy doesn't play and I go down to 9. But it also means that I've got the 2 Spurs assets next week, so I don't have to make a transfer for those back in again. And it would be a bit of a safer play then to look for the sort of coming game weeks where we have potential of doubles, potential of blanks, and I've still got 2 free transfers and a better overall squad to sort of navigate those fixtures. So here are a few transfer options that I'd like to focus on if I was going to make a transfer. So in terms of solving those doubts, first up would be potential Mendy transfer to Sanchez. I'd ideally like to go for Forster to Sanchez and keep Mendy and have a rotation between them. And that was always really my plan when I wildcarded 2 weeks back. But as you can see at the top there, I've got 0.1 million in the bank and it just doesn't allow the funds to do a Forster to Sanchez move. So it would have to be Mendy that made way. A bit frustrating because he has Fulham next week. But I do think that Sanchez has been doing really well and has got a really good fixture this week and could be rotated or even just played and Forster benched. So something to look at. I'm really not that worried about this one. I think I'd like to be able to do this move and I could potentially use my 2 free transfers. There's nothing stopping me doing that. But as we'll mention later on, the reason why I'd only like to make 1 transfer this week if possible. So if I do stick with Mendy, next up then would potentially be Alonso. And if I wanted to take Alonso out, I want to obviously downgrade to get some money, which then means I could spread that elsewhere. So if I did switch out Alonso, someone to bring in good for this game week and good potential going forward would be Target. He's got a good attacking threat. Not really sort of a goal scorer, but definitely on assists. Takes a few set pieces. So got the potential this week to get a clean sheet against West Brom. I think he's quite a good all-round pick, and it'll save, I think it's about 0.8 million. And I can have that then in the bank to obviously put into the rest of the squad, especially when I've got players like Trent Alexander-Arnold, who's taken up a lot of money in that defence. And I think there is at some point a Villa double game week due. They have a fixture to rearrange, so that's obviously putting a player into your team that has a double. What the fixtures will look like for that game week, who knows? But usually when they play a double, we even saw Son play 2 last week and Kane only play 1. Kane scored twice, Son scored once, but with bonus points and the added game fixture, he was able to get the same points as Kane. So having a double sometimes is really worth it. Even if he got 2 points for appearance and another 2 points, that's 4. It's only 2 off someone who would get a clean sheet. So something to bear in mind. Again, if you're building a squad going forward and you don't have, like me, I don't have any chips left, but I've got that 2 free transfers in the bank. Another transfer to look at would be for the midfield. Now this is going more towards that sort of transfer to transfer option for this week and then flipping back again next week. So I could take out Son and put in Greenwood. It does then still leave the issues around Jota potentially not playing, Alonso still not playing, Mendy, not sure if he's going to play. But as I mentioned, I'm quite confident Mendy will play. Hopefully Jota will come off the bench for something. But that gives me a 12th person. So if Alonso was starting and he didn't play and he got taken off, I've got one option to come off the bench. At the moment, it would be Gundogan, Son and Kane all on my bench who are all not playing. This would mean both Gundogan and Kane would be on the bench. And just looking at it sort of set up, I'd probably end up benching Vidra potentially and having a 5-4-1. So that's another option to look at. Greenwood has been in good form as of late. He doesn't always get a full 90 and he doesn't always start, but he is always within the action, and he's a really I like his directness. When he gets the ball, he is willing to pass. He's not totally greedy, but he is also, if he's got a sniff of goal, he's willing to take the shot. And I think that sort of attacking prowess is what Manchester United need at the moment. And against a Leeds team who are very leaky at the back, they're without Rafinha because it looks like he's going to be out a bit longer term. So they haven't got the same attacking threat as they have previously. Might mean that Greenwood can get something, but again, he's not the most nailed-on player to bring in, and it would mean that I'd probably want to bring Son back in again next week because Man United play Liverpool. So just something to bear in mind, that obviously a lot of people are looking towards him at the moment, but just look at the fixtures. I think United players are good to bring in potentially after next week, but obviously until then, just bear in mind that he's not the most nailed-on player within the team. They do have a bit of fixture rotation and they do have Europa League in the back of their mind as well, so there might be a sort of bit of movement within the squad for that. So this transfer, very similar to the Greenwood in for Son. This one sees Maddison coming in for Son. They've got a really good fixture this week, Leicester, against Crystal Palace. They've also got some good fixtures going forward, so my mindset would be to bring him in to then probably transfer back out for Son again next week. Obviously with that 2 free transfers, I need to make one this week just to make sure it's used wisely. And if I've got 3 players blanking, it sort of is a good rotation between 2 players. But also it's going to be quite difficult to take him out of the team if he does well this game week, Maddison, because you're looking at the next fixtures are really decent as well. So unless I was looking at maybe making 2 transfers next week to use those 2 free transfers up and bringing out sort of Alonso to reduce the cost there, I could then potentially look to upgrade Lingard or Jota, but I think that's such a big jump. I don't think it's going to be possible. So it probably would have to be Maddison making way if I did want to bring Son back into the team. So not the best, obviously, in terms of having to take out good players with good fixtures to replace with another player with a good fixture. But it's just something to think about, that if for some reason, say, Son got injured or you just didn't want to have to go back to Son because you think that Maddison is performing really well, he's got good fixtures going forward, so it's not just like a 1-week punt, not just this game week, but the weeks going forward. If I was to look at making a change up front, Kane is also blanking this week. He is definitely someone I'd like to have for Sheffield United for the next game week, but there is a bit of an injury concern. We haven't heard the team news from him yet, so we're going to wait on a little bit of injury news before any sort of decisions are made. But even if he does get transferred out this week, I would be wanting to bring him back in again for the Sheffield United if he was obviously fighting fit. They have got the final coming up in between, but it will be after the deadline that he gets announced if he's starting. So if he plays a full 90 and he's looking fighting fit, I think obviously that'll make a good decision if you want to bring him in next week, if you take him out this week. But obviously that'll be looking at if his minutes are managed, how he's looking in terms of injury. But there is a potential to switch him. So if I was to switch him out this week, I'd probably look to take him out to bring in someone like Watkins. He's got a lot cheaper price point, but in terms of his fixture, he's got West Bromwich Albion, and I know that if I did need to hold on to him, and there was other injuries that I needed to sort out, or Kane was long-term injured and couldn't bring him back in, or it didn't make sense to bring him back in, then Watkins has got a double fixture coming up shortly as well. So in the next sort of 3 to 4 game weeks, which haven't been announced yet, there's a potential for Aston Villa to have a double put in there somewhere. So you're bringing in a player that obviously, again, has that double in the bank coming up. We will be waiting for injury news from the Spurs camp to see if Kane can play. I think a lot of people are going to want to bring him in if they haven't got him, transfer him back in if they've taken him out this week, or even just bench him and hold him through to that Sheffield United game if he can play. Another striker to bring in for Kane would be Jamie Vardy. Recently, he hasn't been getting a lot of points for FPL managers, but that's not to say he's been performing badly. He's been in the action, he's been doing really well, lots of shots. It's just a case of he hasn't been able to convert those into FPL points. Last fixture saw him get a goal and assist. Obviously, that's probably piqued a lot of interest for him now, especially with the price point so close between him and Kane. But he's certainly someone to look at against the Crystal Palace that's struggling at the back, leak a lot of goals, and I think that Leicester could get some good returns. And if it is a case that Kane is injured a bit more long-term, he's definitely someone that you wouldn't mind keeping in your team a bit more long-term. You've got, I think it's about 3 or 4 fixtures where they've got a good run, Leicester. So definitely someone to bring in as a sort of backup for Kane. Likelihood is you would want to switch him back again for next week if Kane is fit and plays a good, decent amount of minutes in the cup final. But obviously you have got to consider that Leicester will have a good fixture as well. So I think it's going to be a very tough decision for a lot of managers if they've brought Vardy in for Kane. If you'd like to keep up to date with the latest video posts, locked in team selections and chat during the game week, then you can follow me on Twitter at FPL Squad Picks. So here's this week's fixture focus. I've listed a few games here which I think are the ones to focus on, and I've listed the players within those teams that people could look to target to bring in as transfers this week. When making transfers, it's sometimes useful to not only think about this game week, but the game weeks coming up. I've listed game week 33 and 34 here. I haven't gone beyond that, but there is potential from 35 onwards that there may be some doubles and blanks to come, and that sort of centres around fans potentially coming back and teams looking to have some sort of fans within their grounds for at least one game before the end of the season. So something to bear in mind, and obviously to keep an eye out when that does get announced. But even from this game week to next, there's some blanks happening this game week, as we've already mentioned. But if you look at the fixtures for the game week after, for instance, the Man City v Crystal Palace and Tottenham v Sheffield United fixtures are both very strong. And my bench is full of those players. I'm not saying that Gundogan will play that Crystal Palace game, especially with commitments in other cup games. But if KDB, for instance, stays injured and is not looking like he's going to be in the squad, he may get some minutes. So City players aren't really those who you want to get rid of straight away. But if you obviously need to sort of plug that hole within your team this week, there might be someone to look at if you are holding someone like Gundogan, but it's just playing that pep roulette. But when you go to the Spurs assets, if Kane is past fit, Son as well is back and injury free, they're both players definitely that I'd like to hold for that Sheffield United game. I think Sheffield United are very low on confidence still and just conceding a lot of goals at the moment. So they're going to want to obviously make sure they get that top 4 finish with nothing else really to sort of focus on after this final. So if you are looking to make a transfer for any one of those players this week, then just to bear in mind, is it going to be a case of you're going to want those back the game week after? Or can you move around your squad a little bit and you've got a decent enough bench to navigate the next game week 34. For me, this is why I thought it was very important after I made my wildcard 2 weeks ago to plan for sort of cover for 2 weeks so that I could do this roller transfer. I don't have any more chips, so if anyone is trying to navigate these last few game weeks without any chips, I think if you have a potential to hold and roll a transfer, it's going to be a big help towards the end of the season. So it allows you now to make sort of a transfer this week if you wanted to take out one of those blank players and bring them in next game week, knowing that you've still got 2 free to roll on until obviously those doubles and blanks are announced further on from game week 35. So I'm hoping to be able to get through this game week with only 1 transfer and still field the starting 11. And then next week, still have 2 Spurs assets and potentially Gundogan playing against Crystal Palace. I've not had to move them around and I managed to get through the week without too much disruption to the team, and then I still have those 2 free transfers. If I do end up taking out a Spurs player, obviously because they are the most expensive on my bench, and bringing in someone else, the likelihood is I'll be able to switch those back around given that there's not any other injuries to sort of deal with after the game week 33. So before any transfers are made, this is what my starting 11 would look like. I think I will make a transfer. It just makes sense. I've got 2 free transfers. I've got 3 players blanking on the bench. Even if I end up going to that sort of Kane to Vardy just to cover for this game week, or potentially a Son out for Maddison, I think those options are going to be a case where I think those options are really safe. They've got a good fixture, and if there were any injuries long term, say for Kane, then I've got Vardy in and he's got a good fixture next week as well. Obviously going to be hoping that Alonso plays, but if he doesn't play, that also gives me that extra player off the bench to cover, so I haven't got an issue there, and I'm quite confident that Mendy will start this game, and just got to hope that Jota, if he doesn't start, comes off the bench, and just hopefully Jurgen can sort of give some light on that through his press conference. I hope that's given a good bit of information for you to think about and looking at your transfers for your team. Another early deadline, another blank game week, and then still some more fixtures yet to be announced in terms of doubles and blanks coming up. It's been a bit of an interesting FPL season so far, so good luck everyone, and I'll catch you again soon. Feel free to leave a comment below about who you think will be vital this week and going forward. If you feel I've missed anyone, put their name below to hear mine and other managers' thoughts. If you like this video, please give it a like and hit subscribe. Hit the notification bell not to miss more content coming soon. Thanks for watching.